Welcome to another edition of the Vandy program. I'm really excited for this one because I've known David Eckstein for several years now. We actually met during the crazy days of crypto PR, and he's one of the more fun follows that you'll find on LinkedIn. And thankfully, I guess for him, maybe for us, we're not going to find him on some of the other media. But David, welcome to the program. And I guess the first question is give the viewers a little bit of a background about you, how you got into the PR industry, what you've done leading you up to this point.
Sure. Well, thank you for the intro. And yes, I am fun. There's no doubt about that. Um, I've been working in PR and comms for 25-ish years. I got my start actually in sports PR as an intern with the Washington Bullets, which no longer exists in that iteration. They decided to change to the Washington Wizards and still haven't won a championship. Um, but I moved on from there, worked in public affairs for a hot minute, decided that wasn't the world for me. Um, did some internal comms, and then ultimately um, got started my PR career in earnest at Ogilvy PR in Chicago. Um, I was working on some accounts over there, and ultimately there was a staff meeting one day, and they said, we've got this new company we a new client we've landed, and it's online brokerage. You don't understand what this is because this hasn't happened yet, but it's basically the ability to buy and sell stocks online. Who's interested? And my arm reflexively shot up like that. And I looked around the room, and nobody else had raised their hand to be anywhere interested in that project. So I got to work on that. And that was the first of 2 decades worth of working in fintech. Um, Over the course of time, without to go back to Ameritrade, that was when we launched Ameritrade. It was obviously a big deal, got him on the cover of Kiplinger's, the big pieces in Barron's, Time Magazine. Um, let's see, New York Times, as I recall, Wall Street Journal, you name it. And and ultimately, I'd like to think that there's one part of me that is partially responsible for getting the Cubs the World Series, because that was before Joe Ricketts owned the Cubs. And so he made a few $1 billion owning Ameritrade, took that money, bought the Cubs, and then in 2016 won the World Series. Dave, as a Cubs fan, I know you are because I see the banner behind you. You're welcome. Um, and anything that's happened since, I take no responsibility for. So,
Now, Ameritrade was the first, right? Or
well,
up
E-Trade,
there
there
with
were,
E Trade.
yeah, it was the E-Trade. Let me rephrase. There were a whole bunch of them, but none of them had any real market presence, and none of them were doing it really with any meaningful web presence. A lot of them were you could buy and sell online, but um, it wasn't with a web browser. You had to download software. You had to get some software, and it was all kind of DOS based, as I recall. So um, to go back way, way into the weeds. Um, but yeah,
A lot of
help them.
a lot of people picking up their powns going
What
DOS.
is
How's
DOS?
DOS
Right,
spelled?
DOS.
Is
Right,
that with
right.
an umlaut
Just
over
wait
the
till
A?
Yeah, just wait till they find out that the first programming language I learned was BASIC, um, which is a whole other
Not
conversation. But
not COBOL and not the punch cards.
I took Pascal in college. Nobody, that's a dead language too. So, but enough about the boring stuff. Um, so so they were the one of the first online brokerages. It was basically them and E-Trade and Schwab. Within about a month or so, Schwab had to completely upend their business plan. They were at one point trading for, or buy and sells were about 120 a share or 120 a trade. Within about a month or two after Ameritrade launched, they dropped their pricing down to $30 $30 a trade. So it was clear that that was going to be the future of online brokerage, and for retail traders, it was a huge deal. Um, and then I took my career. I went out west because that's where all the fintech was, and in a lot of ways remains. Ran comms for Morgan Stanley's online brokerage unit, another one of the first robo advisors. I worked in supply chain finance. I worked for ran comms for an investment bank. Blah 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 blah, and it continues on, and the convergence of financial services and technology is kind of about 3/4 of where I hang my hat. Then there's I've done some work in health tech. I've done work in crypto, as you mentioned earlier, which, depending on your interpretation of fintech, that may fall into that category. Um, and and for a stint, I was also a reporter for Tribune Media and Uprocks, and then also have written for Wired and ESPN and Sports Illustrated and Daily Beast and um, whatchamacallit, a few others, Southwest Airlines in-flight magazines, strangely enough, and a few others. Um, and and I live in Los Angeles, and that's what's going on here.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and
Yes.
I want to start with the Washington Bullets because because I'm a former sports information director, so I worked at Chicago State University on the south side of Chicago, which
Yes.
was, as I like to say, barely Division One, but Division One
Yes.
enough to be Division One.
Yeah.
So Bullets pre-Wizards, was
Correct.
Jordan anywhere near?
Oh no 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 no. The best player their best players that at that time were Tom Gugliotta and Calbert Cheaney, uh, neither of whom you remember. The
I
most the
do,
most
but
okay. Oh, you're a sports information director. Of course you do. The most important person out of that entire lineup was George Murasan. Why do I mention George Murasan? He was the giant in the movie My Giant opposite Billy Crystal, a 7'7" Romanian guy, um, just ginormous.
they
And
had a.
he,
Were you
as
involved at all in his Snickers ad?
no, no.
Do
But I
you
will say,
remember
as
his Snickers
somebody,
ad?
I will say, as somebody who's 6'5" or thereabouts, standing next to a guy who's 7'7" makes you feel really, really, really small. It's weird. It's a weird sensation. Nice guy, good foul shooter, but the Bullets sucked. They were terrible, just awful.
Do you remember the George Mirasan? It was right after
Maybe.
Jordan. So Jordan had come out with his cologne and had the silhouette of Jordan and Jordan cologne. It was
Yeah,
actually a very popular cologne. So Snickers was doing these not going anywhere for a while ads, and
yeah.
they had one with George Mirasan, his cologne, Mirasan by George,
No,
and
that's funny
the
though.
host sniffs it and says, "Is that cabbage, George?" And then they
Oh
tell you
yes, yes.
not going anywhere
Now that
for
you
a
get to
while.
now that you get to the punchline, I do remember.
Yeah, try a Snickers. So you survived that and got into fintech. So let's talk a little bit about Ameritrade because I think some of what when our paths crossed, it was 18, 19, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
We both started working on some crypto clients. Some of those stories are probably, I guess, could best be some of those firms could best be called fly by night, and I'm sure we both have stories. But the let's talk about the intersection of kind of trust and online and watching all of that grow up with Ameritrade and its competitors. What was the biggest challenge that you had to
That
face?
that you hit the nail on the head, and um, one of the things that in a new space, and especially when it deals with people's finances, trust is paramount. Um, if you're buying and selling it, if you're buying a T-shirt online, trust. Okay, you spend $20, the T-shirt doesn't fit right, it's not sized correctly, maybe it's bad material, whatever it is. Okay, is it pain? Is it not? Are you happy? No, but is it the end of the world? No. If you start screwing with people's retirement savings, um, and their finances, that's the end. So trust was a key tenet of our overall platform. Ameritrade had been, as an entity, in business since the early 70s. They were one of the first discount brokerage firms, in sort of the same vein that Schwab was. And of course, the internet didn't exist in any commercial way at that point. But they had a solid 20 something year track record of of client service and buying and selling stocks and doing everything that a brokerage should do. So they were able to draw on that and then transition and leverage that track record and show and help create the trust that was so important to people who were going to be using their platform for stock trading. So yeah, I mean, again, you hit the nail on the head on the issue of trust, which is something that has always been a key component to what I'm doing. The build. How do I put this? Creating that trust between the consumer, whether it's a business customer, or a retail customer, and whatever financial services entity they're working with.
That translated in some cases in crypto, I guess, okay-ish with, maybe the folks like Coinbase. But in the vast majority of cases, that did not translate.
Yeah, I mean, there were companies who had reached out to me to say they wanted to work together, and it took about 30 seconds of research to realize that was not going to be an avenue I wanted to go down, because I couldn't in good conscience say this is the next best thing in whatever service you're trying to get, and knowing that there's a potential that it could be compromising somebody's retirement savings, their business, whatever it was. That was just not something I felt comfortable doing. And did I lose some business as a result? Yeah. Do I know that I made the right decision? Absolutely.
You had told me recently that I guess anyone who's worked in crypto has stories. I think you said one was crazy and one was maybe downright okay, mean.
Yes.
Tell me the, I guess, well, the whichever story you want to lead with.
Well, I would say, as much as I'd like to limit that to crypto, there are a lot of startups that I've worked with that are also, I have crazy stories too. So I don't want to make that exclusively a crypto, assign that exclusively to crypto, but for the purposes of your question, I'll start with I'll start with the mean one, just because I really disliked what they were doing, and it turned out I was right. I don't take any pleasure in being correct, but this one company sent a really nasty gram to somebody who worked for me, and then CC'd everybody. It is a response to a very simple, polite, earnest question. She was a younger staffer, and I didn't take kindly to it. I told my supervisor that I didn't think that was appropriate, and I thought that we should stick by our values, and if not, throw them out the door, at least say that's not how we don't talk to our employees like that, and we should really think about how we talk to people like that. Well, that went over like a lead balloon internally, which was very disappointing to me. Later on, I was, how do I put this? The trust level for me was gone, in a range of ways. They asked me, these guys were also behind on their bills, which was another matter. And the person who I worked for asked me whether we should continue working for them. And I said, do you trust them? And to which this person responded, no. And ultimately, these guys left behind about $50,000 in unpaid bills, which, yeah, I mean, that's problematic from a business standpoint. But the takeaway from that is trust your gut. If people treat you like garbage, um, there's a pretty good chance that there's a lot of stuff that they're going to do that's going to be shady along the way too. So now that I've gotten rid of the really kind of dark one, let's end on a lighter note, which is somebody else who I had done some work for in the space. Came up with this other thing that he wanted to talk about, and it ultimately was a white paper that basically said that we're living in the Matrix, and he had figured it out mathematically speaking. So that was humorous enough. I then took it to my cousin's husband, who has a PhD in applied physics from Stanford, which he got when he was 21 years old. Exactly. I showed it to him. I said, is there any validity to any part of this research? And he said, no, but it's really, really funny. So, um, that's that. But again, I don't want to assign wackiness to crypto exclusively. I worked for a company that was looking for additional revenue streams and decided that they wanted to take their technology and OEM it with a porn site in the fintech space. And I said that wasn't good for your brand. And I think they went and did it anyway. So again, there's any number of stories. One of my clients, to the best of my recollection, made crystal meth in his basement. So there's stories to be had.
How do you bury that in the 10Q? I guess at the at the end of the year.
Private companies don't have to disclose anything in a 10Q. That doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, you could also, and that seems to be the issue with most of the crypto folks, that just the mystery behind it.
Yes.
But you just reminded me something, because one of the things at the outset that I said was that you're really good follow on LinkedIn. And one of the reasons, and I printed these off, and so I'm going to read a couple of them. One of the reasons is PR truisms. And your story about the mean person kind of reminded me of one of your truisms from a couple months back. PR truism is, according to David Eckstein, he says, PR truism, especially for agency leadership, if you're not dedicating a regular portion of your time to mentoring junior staff because it cuts into billable hours, you're doing a great disservice to your business, your employees, and your clients. Talk a little bit more about that.
I sound smart saying that. I mean, but it's true. I think that there's so much focus on billability, and I realize that in an agency environment, revenue is everything. But if you want to grow your staff and you want to have them not just sit there and feel like they're assembling widgets, doing assembly line PR, you need to spend some time doing professional development. It's to me, it's a critical part of what any agency should do, for really anybody, but especially the junior staff, because it makes them ultimately, it's more efficient. I mean, to put it in crude sporting terms, think of it like batting practice or working with a hitting coach. I don't know anything about baseball, but I know that those people exist. So why do they do that? To make them better hitters, to make them more efficient, to increase their chances of winning. Now, in a professional environment, you should want to do the same thing. Does that mean it'll cut into mean a little bit of a small financial hit up front? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how billable your staff is at that point anyway, and what your targets are. But even then, if you spend if you're billing out a junior staffer at 125 an hour, and you spend 2 hours a week or an hour a week doing professional development over the course of a month, that's $600, $700, $500, something like that. And sure, that extends out that's for one person, and that'll multiply based on how many people you're dealing with. But still, that's not a huge expense. I would say this, that if you're going to do professional development, and I believe you should, make sure that it's structured. Don't just come into it and say, so what do you want to talk about today? Then you're just wasting everybody's time. That's not a good idea either. Say, you know what I want to talk about today? I want to talk about the best way to write a pitch letter, the best way to develop a media list, the best way to, you pick the topic, best way to understand more about your clients, best way to communicate. Pick a topic, make it structured, and don't make it a lecture either. Make it interactive. Make it a way that somebody can then it can be a dialogue and almost kind of a practice session, depending on what you're doing. I think that'll get you somewhere in the long run. It also takes some of the unease for that person away when they're presented with that same scenario in a real work situation. So if they go, oh, this is what I really need to do in this situation. I practiced this. I'm comfortable with it. Let's do this. I'm a firm believer in the value that it delivers. You may be a short-term upfront expense, but the long-term value, one, in terms of their skill set, two, probably employee loyalty, which is a huge deal because the cost of turnover is, although these days, who knows what it is, but still, and it makes them better. It makes them better in the client service world. It makes them more trusted advisors, which encourages longevity for the client.
Now the pushback, I wouldn't push back on any of that because
But you're going to.
I think it makes a ton of sense. I can imagine though the pushback coming from the big agency holding companies that have all pushed everything to AI is going to solve it all. And among the things that they're going to solve probably is mentorship. So as opposed to sitting down with a senior level staffer and taking some of your time and their time at a few $100s an hour billable, no, we're going to pawn this off to the AI machine and let that act as your mentor and make everybody more efficient. What do you say to that?
I would there. I think there are probably two answers to that question. Are there components that can be presented in a some sort of I'm loath to use a PowerPoint deck or something like that. That AI can generate, maybe, but does ChatGPT have 25, 30 years experience in working with the media, or is it a new technological construct that basically uses large language models to pull together a bunch of gibberish from far corners of the internet, some of which are nonsense and or not or are surface level. And I would venture to say that it's the latter of the two that AI will deliver. Plus, what kind of message does it send to your employees from a culture standpoint if you're just going to offload somebody onto a computer to stare at it? Also, who knows? You never know what you learn from junior staff too, by the way. That That's the other part of mentorship. It is not always it is not a one-way street. And
Yeah,
people who think that are have haven't thought the whole thing through or are in denial, because that's not true at all.
yeah, we had couple years ago, we had a junior level staffer that was just absolutely dynamite. Half of the time, we were listening to her with, "Hey, this is how you use." She was an expert on a bunch of things. One of those was the tool Canva and using Canva and how to make quick graphics that are brand friendly and all that. And we're like, okay, please roll with it. But let me watch while you do this because I want to learn something while we're at it. The some of the other truisms. Too many agencies will push way too much work down to junior staff and not prepare them adequately to do that work. Hopefully, yours isn't one of them. That's kind of in line with what
Yeah, I
what you
mean,
were just saying.
yeah, I mean, the issue there is it's a profit margin situation, because what they'll do is they'll pay a junior staffer $40,000 a year and bill them out at 150, which on an annualized, if my numbers are right, that's $300,000. And so the margins, that's 260,000. If you don't exclude the benefits and all the other stuff, but that's a much bigger margin than somebody who you bill out at 250 and then pay whatever it is. I mean, you get the point. Is that
Yeah,
the margins are better when you push it down to junior staff.
yeah. Let's talk about the. I guess it's being called Burgergate. Some of us are kind of tired of hearing about it, but it's all over. Even the trying to get some of the other brands to weigh in on it. It's crazy. Long story short, guy from McDonald's eats a big arch, I think they call it,
Yeah.
on camera, and doesn't look legitimate. Here's your hot take. So this is not officially a PR truism. This is also known as a hot take because that's how you've categorized it. This is what you say. No one goes to McDonald's because their burgers are delicious, savory, or even unique. Which is true. They go there because they're hungry, and McDonald's is cheap-ish and fast, and sometimes their kids drag them there. Anyone who is disappointed that the CEO of McD's isn't delivering an Oscar-worthy performance while choking down his food should instead think, quote, at least he's being honest, end quote. It's the other CEOs who are not credible. The reality is none of them should be posting on social media in the first place, but for very different reasons. So I don't disagree with anything you just said, but tell me what the very different reasons are.
How do I put this? Nobody. What they really should do is have the product sell itself. Now these guys are just piling on and going, "Oh my God, this is the greatest burger I've ever had." Bullshit. Excuse me, I'm not going to swear. Nonsense. Um, nobody believes that A&W or Wendy's has the best burger in the world. Should this guy have gone on there and said, uh, one, uh, somebody internally should have said, let's skip this one. Let's sit this one out. We don't need to do this. Um, Now, as for the other guys, they're just overacting and being, just trying to pull a fast one and really piling on. It doesn't do anything. It's just a big goof. I'd actually never even heard of the what's it, McArch?
I believe
Arch
it's called Big Arch.
Big Arch. Well, I just remember that they had the Arch. Didn't they have the Arch
Arch.
Deluxe? The
They
billion.
did have the Arch Deluxe. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, that they had relaunched that, and then I'd forgotten. But yeah, let's just stay on brand. Don't try to be something you're not.
Well, and one of the confusing things about this whole Burger Gate is I can't tell you what the product is. I can just tell you it's another burger from McDonald's.
Yeah.
and it was poorly acted on camera by a CEO who probably should not have been on camera, poorly acting
No,
his way through eating a burger. But you remember, you may not be old enough to remember the McDLT, but it was repopularized when people found out that Jason Alexander was in the original McDLT video
I thought we
dancing.
determined I'm older than you.
Uh,
I just
but
the thing I remember about the McDeal team most importantly was that it was basically the end of styrofoam packaging
okay, yeah,
because they had the hot side hot and the cool side cool, and it was this giant styrofoam thing, and a bunch of environmentalists were like, these are terrible for the environment, and that ended up being the beginning of the end for styrofoam packaging at McDonald's.
that part I didn't remember. I mean, I remember they had to have two separate compartments. So for all you kids out there, they had to have two separate compartments. They put lettuce, tomato on one side, so the cool stayed cool, and they put the burger on the other side, and the hot stayed hot. And that was the big selling point. 40 years later, almost, maybe, that's all we remember is the hot stayed hot, the cool stayed cool, and you could at least tell
Right.
us what was going on with this burger. This new archiness or whatever it's called is not.
I'd never
I,
seen an ad for it, and I consider myself a fairly good consumer of media, and my kids drag me to McDonald's more often than I wish. But I'd not even heard of that, which was the most shocking part of the whole thing. Not his bad acting, not that he takes really, really, really tiny bites of food, but that I had never heard of it.
and I wonder if that was also part of the plan was, well, let's do some
Was that the deal?
surreptitious launch with and see what sort of controversy we start or faux controversy we start or
Nah.
whatever. But great moments in burger launch history, it
Yeah,
was not.
yeah.
But
I
it
mean, he
did
looked.
allow, and some of this is I mean, you did say, hey, maybe the comms team at McDonald's should probably have sat this guy down and said, this is not a good idea. Let's figure out a way to make this look better. But
Well,
you've got all the industry people chiming in. Wendy's is using this as an opportunity for their trademark snark on social, which again, has that ever driven anybody to a Wendy's store? You're gonna go there because it's nearby. Maybe you're interested in their burger, or their burger is better than somebody else's burger, or you like their chili or something. But I've never gone to social and seen, oh boy, Wendy's just clapped back at McDonald's. Boy,
yeah,
that's great. Let's go get some Wendy's right now.
no, I don't think it gets you. I don't think it gets you much of anywhere. But I mean, I'll say this: somebody over at McDonald's should have said after he recorded it, go either one, let's do a second take, or two, maybe we don't need to do this. But whatever.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to there were two burger like authentic burger things that stand out in my mind. One was the Whopper Virgins video. Do you ever seen that?
No, no.
Okay,
Apparently, I
so
don't
this is
consume as much media as you.
that. Yeah, maybe I have a problem. But what the Burger King company did was try to replicate both the Whopper burger and a Big Mac in an environment that was completely devoid of fast food. And we're talking like Ulaanbaatar, the outskirts of the suburbs of Mongolia. And it's a great video. It's just because these people are looking at this thing, they don't know how to eat it.
Is
They're,
this like the
they're,
gods must be crazy, but with burgers?
gods must be crazy, but with burgers, yeah. Um, so that was good. There was also I think it was from McDonald's out of Canada, if I remember this correctly, and this goes back probably 15 years or so. But what they did was they said, okay, your food looks great when it's on a commercial, but how can you make it that doesn't seem authentic? So they actually took it from a restaurant to a commercial place and showed how they were able to um, keep it looking authentic without having to use like
A
corn
food
syrup, dyed
stylist.
bread. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I thought that was pretty cool. That's about the only authentic burger marketing I can
Yeah.
remember.
Huh.
So, well, we won't solve all the
I don't know.
problems in one day. But here's another. You were talking about learning how to maybe mentoring. One of the mentoring things is how to write a pitch. But I saw this the other day and thought it was great. PR truism. Once again, these are David Eckstein's PR truisms. You write
Trademark.
20 yeah,
Patent
20
pending.
2025 and 2026. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Reporters and producers keep smart pitches forever. I just got an email today from a producer related to a pitch I sent for a client just over a year ago.
True.
Pretty sure AI can't do that. So what makes a
Yes.
pitch? What makes a pitch stand out? What makes a pitch good?
Well, to me, there are a couple of things. If you send a pitch and say, "Isn't my company great? You should do a story on it." No, that'll never work. But if you can give them enough that makes it um, time timely, and why should they cover it, um, and understand who their audience is. If you understand those three things, you'll get somewhere. And I'll tell you what the pitch was related to. And in just a couple of days, that video I will probably be able to post on my LinkedIn, um, which is I'm doing some non sorry some pro bono work for companies for businesses that were impacted by the LA fires a year ago. Um, I had sent out a note to a number of broadcast stations in the greater LA area about a independent pizza shop that had burned the shop burned down, the guy's house burned down. He was opening a new location, which ends up being now his only location because the first one burned down, um, in Brentwood. And I sent a note out to a number of different stations here about that, for reasons um, they weren't able to cover it, but they held on to the pitch because it's a story about people who are recovering from one of the worst natural disasters that's ever hit LA. And it's um, trying to kind of get their feedback because after a natural disaster, the two hardest things are where do I live and where am I going to work? Now, this guy had both things impacted. His house burned down and his business burned down. So then what? Um, so I sent the pitch out to, again, a number of stations. And um, late last week, I get this email out of nowhere saying, we're going to do something in relation to Pi Day, which, as everybody knows, is March 14th. And it's a pizza shop. And so, like, we want to do something about pizza pie as it relates to that. And we knew about this guy's business for a range of reasons. They'd obviously seen some of the previous coverage that we'd gotten for him. And then it didn't hurt that one of the Jenners, who's the one who's dating Timothy Chalamet? Courtney?
Ernestine? I
Ernestine,
don't know.
yes.
Yeah, I don't know all the
Ernestine
genders.
Jenner. No, it's Kylie. Yeah,
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Kendall's the tall one, Kylie's the short one, who's dating. So anyway, so Kylie Jenner and Timothy Chalamet, Oscar nominee, had gone to this guy's pizza shop in Brentwood, and it did boffo for his business. And so she's like, "Why does that name of that place sound familiar?" She went back through her emails, found the place, saw my email, sends me a note, goes, "Hey, Pi Day's coming up. We'd love to talk to talk to Robert, who's the guy I'm working with, and talk to him about Pi Day and the things that he's doing to celebrate it because pizza pie, yada yada yada." That again, the email that I initially sent was February, I believe, of last year, early February of last year, and so they were responding to that. And that's just one example. I had a reporter from Reuters call me out of nowhere about a month and change ago and it was in response to an email that I'd sent him 7 years ago. And he goes, "Are you still doing work in supply chain or in SMB finance for these guys?" And I said, "No, but I've got another client that is." And so it went from there. And that's the thing. I mean, as a former reporter, I never deleted anything because you never knew. And this is proof again that if a pitch is smart and ties into gives the reporter something to think about, there's a pretty good chance they'll keep it. And I have had this happen. Those are just two recent examples. I've had way more examples than that, but it happens a lot. And it reminds me that a good pitch, and it starts with, of all maybe obvious things, maybe silly things, a good subject line of your email. If the subject line is intelligent and front loaded with information that's going to make, because you only get 5-6 words on an email subject line before it kind of drifts off into an ellipses, but enough to catch the eye of the reporter, that matters. And then they'll open it and then they'll look at it and then it'll be act now or save for later or delete. And it's kind of up to you to make something that's relevant, thought-provoking, and really makes them go, "Oh, I could see this as a story, or I could see this as a subject matter expert I want to talk to."
Which your point in your PR truisms about trying to get AI to replace that really rings true, because there's so much of any idiot can cut and paste any type of pitch, and especially if you're under the gun, so to speak, and the boss is saying, "Why haven't we gotten coverage for this? I need you to do something with this really quickly. Go pitch it to 100 outlets." That's one thing, and that happens all the time. But the flip side is being able to build that relationship and being able to send a note that actually says, "Hey, David, I remember you from X, and this is Y, and it might help you with Z." And AI is not going to connect those dots. It is not going to connect those dots as well as a human can. And
yeah. And to take that one step further, which is, even if the pitch that you sent isn't what they're looking for, you can then further that conversation, say, "Well, what else are you working on?" And take that conversation. And I can't tell you how many times that's resulted in something too. And it happens all the time. But go ahead, use ChatGPT and see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. And now that it's being baked into all of the tools anyways,
yeah.
At some point, we're going to try to figure out. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I'd love to get your take on this, because it seems like there were two schools of thought in kind of the combination of journalism and corp comms. And one of those schools was keep everything down here so that and I guess this is more of a corporate stylistic sort of thing. Keep our stuff from being turned into a large language model, so that we aren't, part of the term, we aren't bastardized by what gets spat out there. XYZ company, kind of like the old article spinner type thing, that just attaches XYZ company's name to something. And then the other, I had a friend tell me that he knew of I think it was a reporter who was like, "Screw it, I'm going to make these things work for me." And so what this individual did was said, "Here's everything I've written in the last 10 years. And I'm going to train you on becoming like me, so that my life is at least a little easier, so I can put together something that I'll then review, and we can send it out from there." But it's a big, I think it's kind of a jumbled mess right now. This whole, how do we tackle AI? How do we respond to all the pressures that are in the industry? How do we maintain our own voice? And how do we cut through the clutter and still get a lot of stuff done?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say about AI that is interesting from a PR standpoint, well, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but one thing that strikes me every time um, is that a well-written, not it doesn't need to be well-written, but press releases are a huge source of information um, for AI um, analysis, as it were. I can't tell you the number of times I go, type in something in Google, and the first 7 results are all tied, and they'll click through there. They go, "Oh, where'd you get that information from?" And it's tied to some press release that pops out. So I think there's a lesson in there somewhere. I know people are like, "Oh, press releases are dead," and maybe in some ways they are, but there's also a new purpose that they serve too, in that they become a key source of information for AI. As far as, I mean, I've using AI to build media lists. I mean, again, it's a starting point, not an end point. I've tried doing that, and half the time they pull information that's people are don't work there anymore, or they've left the industry, or never worked there in the first place, or they're, in the case of like Forbes, they're the paid contributors, so it's all garbage. So, um, I mean, I will say that it's in its infancy, and I think that there's the expectation that it is uh, perfected at this point is a an unreasonable um, expectation. Um, but I would certainly believe that in the next, as as it progresses and the computing power increases and blah 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 blah, there's greater potential for it. I would be foolish to think otherwise, but I think that the expectation right now that it's going to be replace everybody is also flawed. So I looked something up something. I looked me up the other day on AI for something that I had done, and the summary of what it did was 100% wrong. Um, like it couldn't have been more wrong. I don't want to get into what it was, but it was there was 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs, and not one part of it was accurate, other than the spelling of my name. Um, so it's got a ways to go. So,
So that brings up a point because we were talking recently about some of the things that you like about the industry and some of the things that you would change about the industry. Um, let's start with the things that you would change about the industry.
um,
And we've got a couple more hours, so
yeah, geez. Oh
yeah.
yeah, we're yeah. Oh, look at the time. I mean, I think, what would I change about the industry? I mean, um, I would love to see a better method of analyzing, being able to demonstrate success or communicate what success means to a client. Um, I think that um, that's long been an issue. I think people putting things in advertising terms bugs me to no end. If you want advertising, buy advertising. Um, if you want to help shape perception and get your message out there, do that. I mean, I'll say this. I knew that a question like this was going to come up, and I was thinking about this last night. And I'll say this: if you don't think PR matters, find a company that has all their competitors written about in an article and not them, and then tell me whether PR matters. Because you know what's going to happen? The CEO is going to blow a gasket and go, "How can all these companies be written about and we're not in there? We're just as good as they are." Well, okay, then spend the money and do a PR program of some sort or another. Um, it's not, this stuff isn't just going to materialize out of nowhere. So um, that's, I mean, the other things that I'd like to see, again, I'd like to see more mentorship. Um, I'm not sure that um, the traditional um, bill by the hour model is the best solution versus a retainer. But that's, I suppose that's up to different companies' budgetary issues. Um, I'd like to see. I don't think enough emphasis is ever put on crisis communications either. I think that people only deal with crises after they happen, which is kind of like packing a go bag after the earthquake hits. I just referenced earthquakes because, you know, LA. Um, does that make? I mean, I think that that's a pretty apt analogy, which is you don't if you pack the go bag after the earthquake hits, you're already too late. Um, so those are things that I'd like to see people uh, spend some emphasis on, and then the broader issue of just integrated marketing. I think that well, there are two things. One is integrated marketing. I think that a lot of times there are competing interests, um, whether it's advertising or social or you name the type of marketing communications. And they fight against each other rather than working toward a common goal. I've been part of integrated marketing campaigns that worked really, really, really well. And then I've seen them where they fight against each other and it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Um, and then, uh, what was the other thing I was thinking of? Um, those are three or four pretty uh, key areas. Oh, the other one was just um, uh, well, I talked a little bit about measurement before, but surveys and doing kind of customer research. It's one of those things where they and it's another way of sort of understanding results. They
You're
say,
talking
well,
about surveying. You're talking about surveying the client.
well, no, I'm surveying customer sort of brand analysis, recognition, all that sort of stuff. They want to know. They go, how impactful was this in the marketplace? Well, we need to do research for that. Well, how much is that going to cost? Okay, it's going to cost X. Screw it. Let's not do that. And so you can't get meaningful answers if you don't do meaningful research. Um, and I was talking to a guy the other day who does kind of market research, things like that. And I was telling him the scenarios of which I am describing here. And he just kind of nodded his head politely when I say, well, how much is it? They do how much does it cost? And then you tell them how much does it cost? And they go, well, maybe next time. So, and I realize money doesn't grow trees, but if you want to know the answer, you have to be willing to ask and pay for the questions.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think about in context of our discussion at McDonald's, I'm sure that there will probably be there will be somebody at McDonald's who will be doing the touchdown dance and spiking the football because they're going to go ask the researchers, did anybody know about the big arch before this campaign? And now how many people know that McDonald's has a big arch after this campaign? And they're probably going to have some sort of wonderful ROI that will make everyone jump for joy.
And then they'll say any publicity is good publicity, which is
right.
the biggest lie ever told.
Right, so. Exactly. So the sentiment, though, and I haven't heard. It's funny. I haven't heard one person talk about whether or not the burger is any good.
It probably tastes like all their other burgers, just in varying permutations.
Different permutations. So we talked about what's wrong with the industry, but I think as we wind down, our time together. Give me some things that because obviously you've stuck with it for a while, and congratulations for doing that. Because Lord knows some of us have wanted to throw in the towel a few times. So
You and me both.
what's working in the industry? What do you like with the industry?
I mean, from a practitioner standpoint, there's still really great enjoyment about getting your client or your employer the coverage that um, they want and they deserve. And when the plan, to quote the A team, I love it when a plan comes together. When the plan comes together and everything goes the way you thought it was going to go, and you get the results you want, and whoever you're working for and is paying your bills is happy, um, then to me that's the best part of the job. Um, it's a showing that all the research and the years of work that you kind of put into honing your craft are paying off. So that's something that's um, really enjoyable. I think that there are um, learning new ways to get the message out there via whether it's social, whether it's internal comms, customer communications, all that sort of stuff. Um, really bringing those into play and seeing the results that delivers. Um, that's again, it's to me the joy is in delivering results. That's that's where personally I get the enjoyment. What's working. Um, I still think at the end of the day, despite the contraction in the industry itself, despite the contraction in the media, um, there are, I remain convinced that, and maybe it's the news junkie in me, that media relations and PR matters. It matters to in shaping opinions, getting the message out there, um, and doing everything that it was created to do. Um, and I've learned from some of the best people who've ever done this. One, I my first boss, who was an expert at this at a young age, just can't say enough good things about. And then there was a guy named Al Smedley who was a legend in the industry, and I've written about him every once in a while on LinkedIn because he deserves to be acknowledged. He was Harold Burson's right-hand man. He basically, everybody who's ever been in PR says that they worked in did the Tylenol scandal, Tylenol disaster, or whatever it was, Tylenol scare in '82. Actually, that was Al Smedley. I worked with Al Smedley. Al Smedley was the greatest, uh, one of the greats there ever was, and I had the luxury of working alongside him. When you say what's going right, it's being able to learn from people like him, and then being able to share that information to future practitioners, because it's not going away. Is it parts of it going to change? Sure, but when I started in this industry, deadline. All you knew is never call a reporter after 3:00 because they were on deadline. That doesn't change. That has changed dramatically because everyone's on a rolling, constant deadline because of the nature of how information is the nature of news. But the concept itself remains unaltered. I believe. So there are permutations or slight deviations, permutations, changes in the way it goes, but that's I think it'll continue to stay around for a good long while.
So I guess then the last question, and this has been a great discussion, and thanks for jumping on with me.
Thanks for having me.
The last question then is, if you were to come up with an outlandish prediction for either PR or communications or anything else for the next 12 months, what would that outlandish prediction be? Because the goal is that you're going to come up
Yes,
with something outlandish, and then
sure.
it's going to be on the bingo
Well,
card,
I don't
and
know
then
if,
you'll be famous.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's outlandish or not, but I believe that um, the large agencies that push everything down to the junior staff, at some point or another, those chickens are going to come home to roost, and the clients are going to go, why are we pushing? Why are we working in this environment where you're offloading everything onto somebody who's got 2 to 5 years experience when I can spend that same money on a boutique shop and get um, better experience, better experienced professionals, um, better service for a much more reasonable or at least comparable price. I mean, if it were up to me, and I was a had the chance of either paying somebody X dollar amount and getting somebody with 2 to 5 years experience, or spending that same dollar amount or thereabouts to get somebody with 15 to 20 years experience, I knew where I'd take my money. It would be not even a question. And that's why you see a lot of these boutique shops popping up because they have different business models and et cetera. And I think that that's going to be, I think you'll see more of that rather than less. It's just a question of whether it's going to be from the client standpoint, whether they're going to go, they're going to revert to the no one ever got fired hiring IBM thought process, or they're going to be willing to take a risk.
I think a lot of that I don't think that's a crazy prediction at all. I think a lot of that is already.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is
So,
starting to happen with the like the whole Omnicom thing has been. You've got the people in the middle are being let go, and then they're like, well, wait a minute, I got all this experience, and I know how the model works, and I know the industry, so I can take a better economic model with less overhead of my own, and I don't have to pay for this big
correct.
building. And yeah, create the boutique shop that is able to deliver more results in with less spend.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say this, working remotely never impeded my ability to call a reporter.
and there's and we're we're getting towards a kind of the like I always talk about when I talk about like the weather, they scare us here in the Midwest, where I know you spent some time. They scare us with Storm Team telling us this is going to be the biggest storm ever, and it's not. I think part of that is just to cost justify the fact that they've got Super Doppler 5 over here and Super Doppler 7 over there. Um, and where I'm going with this is a lot of these agencies, you've got the storefront, and you've got to have the really cool office environment, and you got to justify spending on the office environment. And why? I mean, those days are really numbered. And again, if you can pick up the phone from anywhere, or you can hop on a call like this, or hop on a Zoom, meet somebody in Google Meet or whatever. Yeah, a lot of the brick and mortar stuff that was important, it's still going to be important in other businesses, obviously. But I think in PR, working remotely is not the challenge that some other industries think it
Correct.
is. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So that's my apparently not so crazy predictions.
Well, yeah,
I'll
maybe
come up with
maybe you
something
and I are
else.
the yeah maybe you and I are the only crazy ones, and everybody else is going to look at this and say,
I've
who
heard
are
that
these
too.
two, these two wackos? David Eckstein, thanks for hopping on the call with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time. All
and
right.
stay. What do they say in California? Hang loose or stay thirsty or This is the
No, no.
worst close in the
Yeah,
history
yeah.
of interviews. Yeah,
Let's fix that one in post.
yeah.
So I think
I'll hit the
that's what
stop button.
that's actually the closing line is they say we'll fix it in post.
We'll
So
fix it in post. All right. Thanks, everybody.